whatever, we're thinking about doing surgery to try to get rid of it altogether, right?
Surgery, you mean robotics?
Well, surgery of any sort. Yes, I do robotic surgery, but fundamentally the big breakdown would be whether you should have surgery versus some other form of treatment, being like radiation or chemotherapy or something. And it sounds like right now we're thinking surgery is your best option.
Is that robotic? Or you mean...
What? So, again... I do robotic surgery, and yes, I would approach it robotically, but I'm just giving you broad categories, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you there are broad categories of treating people.
Yeah.
Surgery, radiation, chemotherapy,
Yeah.
okay? So if we all settle on surgery being a good option for you, there are different ways to do the surgery.
Oh.
There's a standard way where you open the person up. There's a robotic approach, pure laparoscopy. I don't really do much pure laparoscopy these days. But yes, we could try to do this robotically. It depends to some extent on you, frankly. There are preferences involved, but also what kind of surgery, if any, you've had in the past. Have you had surgery on your belly ever before? That makes a difference, right? It's harder to do a robotic approach on somebody who's had a lot of surgery before. If you've never had surgery before, you've got a better shot at it. And then most other things are equal. The other thing that makes your surgery potentially more difficult than somebody else's would be that you had a TURP done, right? Dr. Rittenhouse went in and scraped things out. So that can make things a little bit trickier. But it doesn't matter whether you do it robotically or open or whatever. It's still going to be a little bit trickier because of having had this TURP done. But nonetheless, I think it would be feasible. Meaning I think it can be done robotically. Okay? No, there isn't a but. I'm just telling you, I'm giving you some preamble, right? Because we've never met before, and I'm going on a lot of information that's been accumulated before we met, right? So I'm trying to take the recommendations of what other doctors have seen you and try to put it all together so I have a sense for, whether we've arrived at this point in a reasonable manner, right? And whether you're on board with it. Like maybe you don't want to do that, then I have to make sure that you and I both agree that surgery would be a good option for you and how you want to go about doing it, right? So what I could offer to you if you wanted to have it done would be I would try to do a robotic approach to your prostate removal, okay? And that is generally what I specialize in. Not every case can be completed in a robotic fashion. Some of them have to be done in an open fashion.
Okay.
And so... most of the time, I haven't had to convert any of my cases from a robotic to open case, but it has happened on some frequency, and not for me, for example, but it does happen, and it could happen in your case too.
Yeah.
So I would say, we would try to do this robotically with a caveat that it's possible that you would need to have an open procedure done. That's not very common, like I said. Other questions you have for me?
Have you seen all the tests that they did, like the bone,
colonoscopy, the
bone,
what else?
And CAT scans and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. You saw all that?
Yes. Okay. Well, they've been summarized very nicely by Dr. King. So,
does she sound confused to you? Because
does she sound what?
She felt they did the colonoscopy, endoscopy.
Yeah.
They kind of found nothing.
Yeah.
And she thought it was maybe strange.
Okay.
She didn't mention anything.
I have not spoken to her, the conversation has gone between Dr. Rittenhouse and Dr. King.
They talked Wednesday.
Okay.
And then Rittenhouse called me up.
Okay. Well, what? So you have to give me. So I have not spoken to her. I can give her a call now if you would like. But what does she say to you?
I'm gonna have to have something done, and it sounded more like robotic.
I understand, but so you were just mentioning that she said it seemed strange that whatever. What did she think was strange?
If they thought if I had cancer in the stomach or something, there wasn't. That's why I record these things.
From what I understand, the summarized findings, and I didn't see the colonoscopy or see any of that stuff. Somebody else did all of those studies, right? But the summarized findings were that there was nothing that they found.
Okay.
So what was it that she thought was strange? That there was nothing found?
Something like that, yeah.
Well, that's not really what she communicated in her note.
Oh.
So I'm not sure if, you heard something different from what she wrote, or if there was a misunderstanding. But it sounded like, what I can gather from her impression was that everything that was checked out from a gastrointestinal standpoint was negative, meaning we didn't find anything.
Yeah.
And then she had a conversation with Dr. Rittenhouse, and Dr. Rittenhouse expressed to her that it would be possible to take out the prostate as an option.
Right.
And that's how she left it. So if she said anything else to you...
Well, do you think you should give her a phone call and ask her?
How do you spell your last name?
Gracenin.
Okay. I can certainly give her a phone call. I'm going to need to find the number for their appointment. You sound like you're expressing concern about whether it's appropriate to do it. And if at some point you've gotten the idea that it's not appropriate to do it, I don't think that we should go forward with that. Especially because the information I have, and this is Dr. King's note, says that you've had all of these studies that are negative. Then she states that she spoke with Dr. Rittenhouse, who said that it would be okay for you would be eligible to have your prostate removed.
Yeah.
And she left it at that, and she said she would see you back in May.
Right.
So presumably she thought this would be reasonable to go forward with. Do you think she has reservations
Does she
about
know?
it?
Does she know more than Rittenhouse? Being that Rittenhouse did
I
what he,
don't know. In what sense?
Well, Rittenhouse did what he did at the hospital.
Correct, yeah.
And found out that I had cancer.
Right.
But she wasn't there, so she never saw the inside of me, so...
Yeah, but it's not something visual. Like, just because he saw that doesn't necessarily mean... I mean, he described it as it had kind of a strange quality to it.
Right.
But that in and of itself doesn't tell us where it came from, right? The whole reason that you had all of these other studies done is because this kind of pathology is most typically found in the bowel. It's not found in the prostate.
Oh.
Which is why we went to all this trouble of looking for something in your bowel which might have been the origin of the thing in your prostate.
Right.
And we didn't find any such thing, right?
Okay.
Which is why we're thinking if this is a primary tumor of the prostate, then the way to treat it would be to focus on the prostate. And one way to do that would be to take it out, right?
Okay.
So that's the train of thought that I'm going on.
Well, if it has to be done, then it has to be done. That's not a good answer?
No, it's not that it's not a good answer, but listen, I'm not going to operate on anybody who's not appropriate for operation, right?
Okay.
And that can be either because they're not a good surgical candidate or this is the wrong kind of treatment. And if at some point when you were discussing this with your various practitioners, like Dr. King, Dr. whoever, if somebody suggested, well, this doesn't seem right to me, you should let me know that, because the information I have so far suggests that people think you should have surgery.
Oh, yeah,
right?
nobody's against it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, you made it sound like you thought Dr. King thought this was not a good idea, and that's not what it sounds like here.
No, she just, no. You know what? Can I just give a quick call? I recorded what she said.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully my sister's home. Am I? Oh, she's babysitting. God, She lives out in the sticks, and they have poor reception out there.
So, the one thing that I do see from this note is that they thought maybe you should have another colonoscopy. Has that been scheduled?
No. No.
Why not?
Just an endoscopy. That's the only thing he said.
But you had the upper endoscopy,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I had the colonoscopy.
But you haven't had a colonoscopy for many years.
5 years.
Right.
Well, he said, yeah, and Markel says, well, you had it 5 years ago. You're not due until 2019. So I said, okay. I mean, I don't know what else to say to the guy.
Okay. I mean, that's the only additional thing that Dr. King stated here, that maybe you would benefit from having that checked out.
I didn't even,
But
never said that.
But other than that, you know, she states that Dr. Rittenhouse mentioned radical or robotic prostatectomy would be an option. And as long as everybody is on board with that, and it's agreed upon that this is an appropriate management strategy for managing this problem, I'm happy to do it.
Okay, you said the only thing that hasn't been checked is the colon.
Yeah, I think so, because your last one was in 2009.
Why wasn't that mentioned then?
Well,
Because it was 5 years ago only?
I don't know. So her statement exactly in that note is that perhaps you would benefit from having a repeat colonoscopy as well.
Okay.
That's a statement in here, okay? I don't know if she didn't communicate that to you or whatever happened, but that's the only other thing that she mentions.
She didn't mention that to me. That word was never brought up to me.
All right. Well, in any event, I mean, that is one thing that we could consider in the interim, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't schedule you for this right away anyway. It's going to be, you know, probably sometime in the next month, but it's not going to be like next week.
Oh, no, I figured another month if it happens.
So in the interim, it would probably be reasonable if we could get you to have a colonoscopy done.
Well, I was reading about it online, but I guess it's the recovery and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. How long do you think I'll be in the hospital?
A day.
Go Monday, come on Tuesday, and recovery.
Well, you'll have a catheter in for about a week.
A week, yeah.
Then you'll come back and make sure that everything is healed up nicely before we take out the catheter. Most people can go back to light activity almost immediately.
I won't be going back to work, so.
But you shouldn't be doing any heavy lifting, strenuous exercise, etc., for at least a month.
Right.
Okay? That's the recovery. And that includes snow shoveling and stuff like that.
Could I drive 2 days after the surgery?
I would not recommend that. You're going to have a catheter in place. Why do you need to drive 2 days after surgery?
Go shopping? Well, I did when I had it in before.
Well, you have to be, one, not taking any strong pain medication.
Oh, yeah.
And two, you have to have pretty good reaction time. We're doing pelvic surgery here. You have to slam on the brakes. That's not necessarily, something that I would trust you to do. So to the extent that you can have someone help you in the first week, it's 1 week. So you shouldn't have to go grocery shopping that many times in 1 week, right?
Well, I would just use that for an example.
Right, but I'm saying if you can have someone help you out, that would be preferable to you doing everything yourself.
My sisters want to come up from Pennsylvania, and I have two of them. And I said, both of you coming up is useless.
Yep.
I said, why come up when I'm in the hospital? I said, come up for 2 days, the next one 3 days.
Other questions?
I guess it was the recovery time, and every time you've done it, you're 100%. I mean,
What do you mean?
Success.
How do you define success?
They're still living and everything's normal.
Well, I have not ever had anybody die on me from a prostate cancer surgery.
Yeah.
Some people have bad prostate cancer, and whatever you do isn't going to make them totally better, right? And your particular type of prostate cancer, again, is an unusual entity. So the standard tools that we use to estimate outcomes after prostate cancer surgery don't apply, because this is not that kind of prostate cancer.
Yeah.
So don't really know how to characterize the behavior of this after surgery. But I think after I talk to Dr. King and have a chance to discuss it with other people, that would be better defined. But again, we're talking about not very many cases. This is not a common disorder.
I know he said 7 or 8 cases in the last 50 years he found.
So getting a sense for the natural history of it and the behavior is very hard. But I would say, in the context of not knowing much else about it, you probably would have a pretty good shot at, or a good shot compared to doing nothing if you removed it, right? Because we know that it's a tumor, and nothing's going to happen with it if you do nothing. I mean, in other words, it's not going to get better if you do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So, but the long-term behavior, I'm not really sure. Did Dr. King mention anything about what she thought, the long-term outcome would be?
No, we didn't discuss that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll certainly I will make it a point to discuss it with her and see if other people have any thoughts, because there are usually other surgeons of other types at these conferences. And that's actually why I bring up it's more useful to talk in that conference than amongst ourselves in this office, because on the way here to talk to you, I said to my partner over there, it's like, hey, do you know much about this type of cancer? She's like, no, never seen it before. So, me talking to the rest of them is not particularly useful, right? But if there was like a bowel surgeon there, they've seen these in the bowel, right?
Yeah.
So they may have a better sense of, what else might be useful for you.
Yeah.
Right? And then after that, 2 other main things that are functional outcomes, right? 1, erectile function. We want to try to preserve that to the extent we can. It's going to be totally dependent on how well we can get the prostate out, because remember, it's about the cancer first and everything else is secondary, right? So if we can get the nerves away nicely and all that stuff, great. But if they don't come off very nicely because they're stuck to the cancer, they gotta go, okay? So that will obviously impact on your erectile function.
What's gotta go?
The nerves.
Oh.
Okay? And that may affect your erectile function. The second thing is that you will probably have urine leakage for some period after this surgery. It will likely get better, but you will have it early on. Everybody does. Okay? So after the catheter is removed, you're going to have leakage. Yeah. But usually that improves with time. So by a year out, so it's a slow process, but by a year out, 95% of people are dry. They don't have problems, but it takes time. So don't be discouraged if at the beginning you're leaking, you need to use pads, etc., etc. Normal, okay? That's normal for the first month for sure.
Yeah.
Usually by the 3rd month, people are a little bit happier. By the 6th month, most people are pretty close to dry. And by a year, almost everybody is dry.
See, before this was discovered, I was planning on moving to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
600 miles away.
Right. Well, listen, that's still in your future. You have to get over this hump first, okay?
Yeah.
But listen, so those are the basic things about this procedure. It is minimally invasive, so we try to do it through some relatively small holes, really small, like this big.
Yeah.
And this should be fairly standard, except for, like I said, this is an unusual type of tumor, and the other thing is you've had the scraping of the prostate done first. So that can make things a little bit different visually than they otherwise would be. But, I think we all have the training here that we can recognize that pretty well. I'm not particularly worried about that.
Yeah.
Okay? But before, what I'll do is, let's get you a date on the books, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to search for some time, and then on Wednesday, I'll talk to Dr. King, et cetera, about this, because before I commit to any surgery, I have to know that it's the right thing to do, right?
Okay.
And I'm getting that sense from reading this, but she and I have not had a chance to talk face-to-face. I trust Dr. Rittenhouse, and he says they spoke together, so my sense is everybody's on the same page, except I've never been involved in those conversations.
Right.
So I would like the opportunity to do that. And if everything seems on the up and up, we're good. We'll just put you on the books.
Okay.
That's it. Okay?
Yeah.
That's where we're headed, right, to go to have surgery, is I'm going to have you sign up for some training to learn some pelvic floor exercises or Kegel exercises. So these are things that help you get your urine control back early. Okay? It's also called biofeedback, but that's just a fancy term. So I'm going to set you up for an appointment for that.
Where do I go for that?
Here. It's here. not today, but one of the coming weeks.
He said I do exercise?
Just learning exercises so that you can strengthen the muscles down there and you won't leak as much, basically. Okay? So that's one thing I'm going to set up for you.
No needles or nothing?
No.
Okay.
No. It's just muscle exercises, basically.
Okay.
And then, like I said, I'll talk to Dr. King on Wednesday.
Okay.
And give you a call after that.
Okay.
And make sure. Because we have to give you a call for the date of the surgery anyway. Okay?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think that that's what everybody is on the same, page about it. But when you mentioned, well, she thought it was strange that nothing showed up anywhere, and then in her note she says, I think he might benefit from a colonoscopy. To me, those are kind of red flags, right? To me, it sounds like, well, maybe you haven't quite finished getting all the information we need before we go forward with this, right?
It sounded like she said, well, when you did the colonoscopy, or endoscopy, we found nothing. And I said, is that good news or bad news? And she goes, both.
Interesting. Okay, the urethra. All of those things, in theory, could have injuries to them. That's not very common. I think I will do a lymph node dissection on you. Just sample the lymph nodes on either side and make sure everything is clean. So, in theory, you look confused.
Is that before the hospital or while
during the surgery?
Oh, okay.
And in that instance, you can end up with something called a lymph collection. That's not a very common problem. I've only had that happen once, but sometimes those need to be drained independently. But like I said, not very common. A lymph node dissection or lymphocele, you may have residual cancer. Like we won't get all of it, for example. That can happen. It's harder for me to know for this kind of cancer, right? Because like I said, it's not very common.
Yeah.
But there's always a possibility that there will be something left behind necessitating additional therapy. We already talked about erectile dysfunction. We talked about incontinence, urine leak if the ends don't come back together very nicely. You can have systemic complications like blood clots. You can have positioning injuries, very uncommon, and possible need for additional procedures. But I'm only mentioning these to you because they can happen. They don't often happen.
Yeah.
But you need to know that they're possible, right?
Yeah.
So does all of that make sense to you? I'm talking to you as if we're going to proceed, and I think there's a very high likelihood again. I'm not trying. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to derail us from going forward with this.
Right.
I'm happy to do the surgery, but I do want to talk to Dr. King, and I think that that's really important. So I will do that on Wednesday. I'll put you in our books. We'll give you a call after I've had a chance to discuss with them.
Okay.
And if you need to have a colonoscopy and all that other stuff, we'll make sure that happens before your surgery.
Yeah.
Okay? Does that all make sense to you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Good.
That's why I recorded.
Good. But you don't have any misunderstandings right now that you can identify. Like, what I've told you so far is clear, right? We have a plan. I'm going to talk to the other doctors. We'll put you on the schedule, arrange if you need any additional studies. I'm going to have you meet with one of the other staff here to learn some pelvic floor exercises, and then we'll do the surgery if that's all correct for everything. Okay?
Yep.
All right.